Okay, so to do this install, we've got a couple of Railblaza products. We've got the SidePort accessory pack here for the Kayak Canoe transducer arm, and we've got a Railblaza SidePort mount. I'm going to have a look and see how to put them together and give you a bit of a run through the install as we go. The idea behind this is to do away with having to use silicone or a wet mount or dry mount within the Kayak hull itself, and use these to fit the transducer on the outside of the hull, and you'll be able to take it off and then put it back on quite easily when you require it. So let's see how it goes. So this particular type of SidePort, you can either fit it on a horizontal surface like this and have your accessory coming out this way, or you can fit it on a vertical surface like this and have your accessory coming up this way. I'd envisaged mounting it on a surface like this so that the angle would point out this way, and we'd have one return going down here and the transducer arm bracket going down that way. So that's what I'd planned when I originally bought the kit, and I'll just have to look and see if that's how it's going to work or not. So when you're unpacking the wrapping that comes around it, you can see that it's got its fasteners here, a couple of different types, and also the instructions on the inside. So have a look at the instructions and then see how it applies to whichever surface you're going to mount it to. One thing that you need to take into consideration with any fittings or modifications you do to your kayak is on the inside of your kayak, if you've got any lines or rudder cables or anything like that that run on the inside, that you're not going to drill through them when you're doing any modifications or adding any fittings. I know with this particular kayak, you've got lines running along here that are to do with your rudder, your cables for lifting up your rudder. So you really need to be careful if you're doing any drilling through this area. I had to be really careful when fitting this particular fitting. But if I'm forward of this spot, they tie off here, but forward of this area, I'm fairly safe, and I've got good access through this particular port. So I can access the back of the nuts through here, or on this side, or I can choose to mount on here, as I have already done for this mount here that I use for my camera boom. So these are all viable options for somewhere to mount this transducer arm. What I need to check with this one is to make sure that wherever I mount the SidePort, I'm going to have enough distance with the transducer arm that it's going to be deep enough into the water to get a good reading. So I don't want to mount my bracket up here if the transducer arm isn't going to be deep enough to get into the water. So I'll have to have a look at this and put it all together, and then make my mounting bracket and put it in a position that's going to be suitable. Okay, I've assembled all of the components and put them into the Railblaza SidePort here, and I'm thinking that this looks like the most likely candidate for a place. The reason why I'm thinking this is the sounder itself is going to be mounted here, and all of the cords for the battery are going to be coming out of here. So this is where all of the cords are going to be. And I think that it'll be easiest to have them all just coming out from underneath here, keep them all nice and short and together, instead of having them run all over the kayak. So I think this is the most likely place to have them. It's a fairly flat surface, and it seems like a fairly neat solution. So I think that's what we're going to go with. It's just going to mean having two holes through here. They're easily accessible at the back for fastening, and it should be a fairly easy job. So the other part of the solution is the mounting part for the transducer, which would come with the transducer itself when you buy it. So now I just have to go back to the box that it came with and find the correct component. Okay, so now that I've picked my location for my SidePort, we need to drill a clearance hole for the securing bolts. So I've just picked the right size drill, or what I think is the right size drill, and I'm going to drill those holes. I've also checked the back of this to make sure that there's no wires, no sensitive parts of the kayak. That's the first one in. Going to be a little bit small, but that'll do for a pilot hole. Drill the next size up. That'll give us good clearance. There we go. Then we can use this bolt to hold that mount in place. While we drill our other hole. And there we have both bolts in place. All we need to do is put the washers and the nuts on the back side. If you were particularly concerned about water getting in, you could put some sealant underneath and that would take care of that. Okay, those are finger tightened at the moment, but even with just finger tightened, that's nice and strong. So now I'm just going to knit those up with a little spanner and on the nut and a screwdriver, and then that'll be ready to rock and roll. There we go. A nice solid mount. It's not like it's going to be under the sort of pressure that a rod holder is or something like that, but it's still nice and solid. And we're not going to have any issues with clearance when that's closed. So now that we've got our SidePort mounted, it's just a matter of plugging it in, locking it on, and we can see there that we can adjust the angle, and with just a turn of this here we can get it more perpendicular. These can swivel at that point or at that point. For me it's just a matter of getting them in line with the angle of the kayak, and you can see that they're well below the water level, and that's what we need. So now it's just a matter of finding a way to attach the transducer to that point there. So here we go, with a little bit of modification to the brackets that came with the actual sounder. It's all mounted up. We've got the Railblaza mount, we've got the transducer extension for the Railblaza, and we've got the actual transducer. We'll just use some cable ties to mount this here, and then it will all look nice and schmick. I'll show you how it finished up. So here we go. That's the final product. A few zip ties to keep it all in place, and the lines run internally back inside the lid here, and then back into the back of the head unit. Not too many cords tangling up the place, and when I'm finished with it I can just unlock that, take that unit out, take the cords out, that all goes back with me in the car, and when I need it again just click it in, plug it in, and off I go. Hopefully this has given you some ideas if you need to do the same thing with your kayak.